DJ Silbert, and I'm curator of post-war and contemporary glass at the Corning Museum of Glass. And I am so elated to be here today on behalf of Masterpiece Art Fair, talking to you about one of my very most favorite things, which is ceramics. And especially today, I'm talking about one of the most inspirational contemporary ceramicists to me, Ling Datchuk. Jennifer lives in San Antonio, Texas in the United States. And in particular, I'm talking about a piece of hers called Half, which is in the collection of the Museum of Fine Arts, Houston. Now this piece takes the form of two makeup powder puffs in a little container. And on the one hand, you see this beautiful blue and white porcelain. And on the other, it's a perfectly white porcelain surface. On top are chicken feet. The handles are chicken feet, which is unusual for a powder puff, and the puffs themselves, you can only just kind of tell, are made with human hair. On the one hand, on the blue and white porcelain side, it is black hair, and on the other, it is blonde hair. And so maybe just by that, you get a sense of some of the ideas that she's thinking about. But I'll tell you what they are. Jennifer herself is Chinese American, so she's first generation Chinese immigrant on one side, and on the other, also as many Americans, the child of immigrants, but her grandparents immigrated from Russia and Ireland. And much of her work, and I think of this as absolutely contemporary work, absolutely relevant to contemporary United States, but really contemporaneity in general, is this idea of being in between and having so many things within yourself. And this is a work that's about her own understanding and parsing of her different identities. So on the one hand, you have this blue and white porcelain side, this Chinese patterning, something we know so much from the history of Chinese ceramics and the ways that it's been appropriated across time. And on the other side, this pure whiteness. And she's thinking about, in her own life, being not quite Chinese enough, not quite white enough, and where the space is in between. And coming from two cultures, Euro-American culture and Chinese culture that value whiteness. So on the white side, which that blonde hair is her dad's hair. She is thinking about, can she make herself whiter? Can she be this idea of whiteness that seems to be what's expected? And on the other side, can she be Chinese enough? Can she inhabit that space? And that hair is her mother's hair. So she is really thinking about what it means to be herself a compound person, and in this object, a compound identity. And on the hands are chicken feet, which is something, a delicacy, a Chinese delicacy that she grew up eating, but also something that always placed her at a distance from her white or non-Chinese American friends. And I think this piece manages to encapsulate in such a small area something that is so relevant to our moment, and also to our thinking about ceramics. Like, ceramics are these intimate objects, can be these intimate objects, these things that we take into our houses. And from even, if you look back all the way at the Bible, the idea of ceramics as being something that we form, that we can be world creators when we are ceramic makers and users. And here in this piece, she is fashioning her own self-identity, working through those ideas in the form of the object. But I also think this piece is showing us how much this idea of authenticity is a really tricky thing. Because even if we think about what is authentic, we see that blue and white porcelain and we see, oh, that is authentic Chinese ceramics. But if you look into the history of blue and white ceramics, you'll learn that the beginning of that is actually in trade, and that it was Islamic traders, Persian traders to China that brought cobalt to Chinese ceramicists to have them make a color and make something that would appeal to their audiences back home. And so that even in the nascence of something that we today think of is so relevant, is so iconic, means China, that even that, there is nothing totally authentic, that we become ourselves through our connection and collaboration with other people and with other ideas, that even even that even in this object, the idea that she has a blue and white half and a white half, and thinking about the space in between, that what makes her so particularly eloquent and her object so particularly eloquent is exactly that she is both, that she is nexus. And I think that is what the opportunity of looking at objects, whether it's objects like this or any other ones, gives us the opportunity to expand our knowledges, to see in other ways, to think ourselves into other spaces, and to remember that we are all the results of hybridities and things that travel great distance. And so that is one of the great gifts, I think, of Jennifer Ling Datchuk's work and of ceramics and of objects and materials overall. They take us to the most intimate places, and they take us very far.